So as he said, I am the founder and CEO of Defy Ventures, and what we do is we recruit the most accomplished former drug dealers and gang leaders who have averaged about 10 years in prison time. And then we put them, when they decide that they want to change their lives, we put them through a highly competitive, intense, Shark Tank style, 1 year long competitive MBA-like program where they're not only going through business plan competitions, but also through life transformation. And we bring in business executives and entrepreneurs just like you from around the country to help them to be all that they can be in many ways. But the way that I wanted to kick off this session is by asking you just to think about a question. What would it be like if you were known publicly for the worst thing that you've ever done in your life? I spent most of the last 8 years advocating on behalf of people who are known for the worst things that they've ever done, even though after serving their time in prison, well, they've supposedly served their time, but they continue to pay the price, and they're the most stigmatized population on the face of the earth, and they're the least cuddly thing to advocate for ever. So this has been my last 8 years, and then 3 years ago, I ended up following suit and becoming known for my own worst choices that I made in my life. So this message may not apply to anybody in this room because I know that you're all super studly entrepreneurs in here, but I'm just guessing that not every single one of you in here is a full-on angel. So some of you may have done some things in your lives that you're not particularly proud of. So I'm going to ask you to go through this little exercise with me right now. Just trust me here. If you would all close your eyes for a minute, please. Stop looking up here, close your eyes. We can do this. Okay, now I'd like you just to think about the worst thing that you've ever done, or one of the worst things that you've ever done. You don't need to share it with your neighbor. These things might be legal, they might be illegal. It might, on the illegal side, it could be from driving drunk to cheating on your tax returns, although we wouldn't like to call it cheating, but maybe fudging a little bit or writing off a little bit of this or that. On the legal side, what are some of the worst things that you could have ever done? I don't know. Maybe it's working your butt off as an entrepreneur to the point where you've neglected your children or the people closest to you. Or maybe it's cheating on your spouse. I don't know what it is, but just get that in your head. And now, keeping your eyes closed, I'd just like you to think about, imagine if this very thing, this dirty secret, became public. What would that be like for you? What if your family heard about it, or your investors heard about it, and you became known for this thing that you've worked hard to not share with others? And now, still keeping your eyes closed, imagine if after getting busted for whatever this is, if you paid the price, like you paid the full price, whatever the price is for your actions that you're not proud of, but for the rest of your life, your identity, your primary identity in society is still that of being an ex-cheater, ex-thief, ex-liar, ex-whatever. And that people are scared to deal with you forever because of this thing that became known about you. And that if you ever had to apply for a job, it'd be the top box that you'd have to even check off on an application, or the first thing that you'd have to disclose to investors. Think about that for a second. Okay, thank you. Thank you for playing along. You can open your eyes. This is the world that I play in, okay? Of the most stigmatized people who have paid their debt to society, or so we say, through our criminal justice system, but who are never forgiven and never have a real second chance. And when they get out, even if they've had a change of heart in their lives, and they try to go get a job, even to flip a burger at McDonald's, at the top of their job application, they have to check the felony box, and they're thrown in the trash pile. So that's what I do, and you may not think, you may think, who cares about the prison rehabilitation sector? It doesn't impact me, right? It usually doesn't impact us and people on our side of the tracks. It impacts people on the other side of the tracks that we haven't thought about. 1 out of 15 Americans serves time in his or her lifetime. 1 out of 15. It's pretty staggering. And studies show that we as taxpayers spend about $250,000 per person that serves time. Like in New York City, where I'm from, $69,000 a year just to lock someone up. That doesn't count the cost of welfare, probation, the courts, like all of that, all the other costs. 70% of people who go into prison come right back to prison. And I think part of the saddest thing is that it's such a generational legacy. 70% of the children of those who serve time end up following in their parents' footsteps. So it's a huge problem, but the reason that I like playing in this space is because it's my idea that it's also prison, and people out of prison also represent America's most overlooked talent pool. The highest social ROI people out there, the biggest underdogs in America. So I'm going to tell you just briefly about my story and how I got involved in this, because I did used to work in venture capital, and then I jumped ship. I was 26 years old when I was invited on a prison visit out in Texas. And my first thought when I was invited on a prison visit when I was living in New York City out in Texas was, no thank you. I could care less about these people. When I was 12 years old, a friend of mine was pretty brutally murdered by 16-year-old boys, and I thought that anyone in prison was a complete scum of the earth. And I thought of all places that I would give back in my life, that the prison sector wouldn't be one of those. But I accepted the invitation, flew out to Texas, had the full tour, and by the end of the visit, I felt sorry for my own self, for my heart, like the way that I had labeled off so many people. And I still am not an advocate for anyone in prison. Some of the people in there still do act like scum of the earth, but there are so many who are sorry and who just want a fresh shot at life. And so wearing my venture capital hat, I started to realize in these conversations with these guys, these former drug dealers and gang leaders, that many of them were not just good potential entrepreneurs, but that they were incredibly smart, proven entrepreneurs who completely understood business concepts that we all get, like marketing and sales. And I mean, these organizations are run by boards of directors. They have bylaws, they have bookkeepers. They're totally for-profit organizations. The one thing that they didn't have down very well was their risk management strategies. So I wondered what would happen if they were equipped to go legal with their skill sets, these people who are left to rot in prison. And so long story short, I jumped ship. I actually had, at the age of 27 then, I had $50,000 in my bank account. I cleared it all out except for $300 that I saved for myself, no joke. It wasn't enough to invest in the program, so I cashed out my 401k. I moved to Texas, where I never in a million years thought I would live. And over the next 5 years, I built out Prison Entrepreneurship Program, which is what it became known to be, PEP, to become what is still today a leading statewide now nonprofit organization that equips men who are in prison to become awesome, successful entrepreneurs, fathers, all of that. And over the 5 years that I was there, we worked in this, again, highest failure industry, and where the recidivism rate is about 70%, our recidivism rate was less than 5%. Our employment rate was 98%. 8 of our guys made more than $100,000 in their first year out of prison. We started 60 companies, our graduates did. Our work became known all over in every major media outlet throughout the country because our guys were so awesome. They raised a lot of angel capital, and we recruited 7,500 supporters, about 1,000 of whom were successful executives and entrepreneurs who would fly out to be a part of these business plan competitions to help in the process of judging these ideas to equip these guys to success. So PEP, or Prison Entrepreneurship Program, was it was a great thing that we got to build out there. And it was my first real experience as an entrepreneur. And I wish I could tell you that I'm here today doing Defy Ventures out of New York City just to build up a nationally scalable model, which I am. But I didn't leave PEP just to start. Something happened in my life where I blew up my own personal life that got in the way of me continuing to run PEP. And basically, I was married for 9 years. I got married at 22, and at 31, I was unexpectedly divorced. And I made some of the worst decisions in my life, which involved having inappropriately close relationships with people that were released from prison. It wasn't against the law, but it was a poor choice on my part, and the Texas prison system made a moral judgment against me that I was no longer allowed to ever go back to the prison system again because of that. And the one thing that I did very well was that I was extremely honest about my decisions. And I sent out a resignation letter to our 7,500 supporters, spilling in great detail my beans. And then I became known for the worst things that I've done. And covered in shame, and having lost my baby that I had poured my life, my everything into, and having to walk away from that, I had no reason to live anymore. And this was 3 years ago. I thought I had no reason to live because I thought that I had lost everything that meant anything to me. But it was about 1,000 people who, within 48 hours of the media going out to national news again about my poor choices, 1,000 people who wrote me emails of love and support and what are you doing next? It was these people who helped to get me back on my feet. And they said, what are you doing next? We want to be a part of it. You have the ability to lead, so go dust yourself off, get yourself right, and let's do this again. So I moved back to New York City, my favorite place in the whole world. And I started Defy Ventures, and Defy because we are all about defying the odds and defying perceptions and stereotypes that people have about the work that we do. And I am indeed building a nationally scalable and replicable model that will bring healing and economic opportunities to every urban community in America. So I'm dumb enough to think that having done this on a statewide level, that I can certainly run a franchise model that can be done nationally. And so I launched Defy Ventures just 2 years ago. And in the 2 years, the results that we've had have been pretty awesome. I'm really proud of them. We've recruited more than 300 executives, entrepreneurs, and investors, and about 300 other supporters. We've raised $1.7 million. We started, I built the infrastructure last year, and this year is when we opened doors for service. We graduated 31 guys, and 21 of them actually already started, incorporated, launched their own businesses, and pretty much every single one of them generated revenue. In addition to those 21 businesses, we incubated. So these guys compete for $100,000 in debt financing when they go through our Shark Tank style business plan competitions. And 5 of the guys are now in our entrepreneurship incubator working with our entrepreneur in residence. And these 5 businesses, in just like the last 2.5 months, have generated a combined $40,000 in revenue, $10,000 in net profits, 25% margins, not sucky for us, you know, and 20 new employment opportunities that are part-time. So these guys are now hiring other people that were out of prison. And thank you. We've placed 28 people in other jobs, and we just launched our second class with 60 brand new student entrepreneurs, as we call them, and we've started serving women for the first time. So we now have our first 5 female student entrepreneurs, and we're very excited about that. And in just the last 3 months, our work has been covered in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and Inc. magazine and a couple of others. We're documenting everything that we're doing and getting ready for national replication. So I'm really proud of what we've accomplished in a short time. And I can talk about this until I'm blue in the face, but I think for us, the best way to show you what we do is to have one of our graduates tell you his story. And so very briefly, I'd like to introduce you to one of our student entrepreneurs who actually was one of the winners of the business plan competition, who's in our incubator. And I'm going to ask him to come up here and talk about the worst things that he's ever done. And he's really nervous right now. And so if you guys would please very warmly welcome up here Jose Vasquez. Give him a real warm welcome, make him feel okay. So this is Jose, who went through the competition. How old are you?
26.
Okay, and tell him real quick about the circumstances that led up to you getting locked up.
So I was raised by a single mother who worked 2 to 3 jobs just to put food on the table. I never had a father figure in my life. Even though my father was in the same neighborhood, my father was actually one of the biggest drug dealers in Rhode Island. So imagine having a dad with so much money but never gives you anything and you struggle to eat.
So you were struggling to eat and you got into the pharmaceutical business?
Yeah. At the age of 16, I started working with a cousin, and I would do everything from delivery to whatever it takes. This was during high school. I made about $700 a week. I seen there was an opportunity for me to start my own pharmaceutical business.
Very entrepreneurial.
Yeah. I took a slight pay cut, so I went from making $700 a week to about $40 a week, but I was my own boss, right? And I ended up growing that business to making about $2,000 a day with about 5 employees.
Okay. And you got caught at what age? Not bad. I told you they're for-profit businesses, but then it all came crashing down at what age? Tell me,
at the age of 23, I was convicted of conspiracy to distribute heroin. And ironically, my father was actually the head guy in our case. So my father, 3 cousins, and I were all in prison at the same time.
So kind of like a family reunion.
Yep, family reunion.
Okay. So you got out about a year ago, and we found you. Tell them in brief what your experience of going through Defy has been like.
It's been amazing. It's been hard. It hasn't been easy, but it's great because Defy really makes you earn whatever you get.
We call it cutting the fat.
Yeah, cutting the fat.
No handouts here.
So we do a lot of homework, a lot of testing, a lot of penalty work. So alone, one penalty could take about 4 to 5 hours. So if you're 1 minute late to class, you have to handwrite this penalty. So, but it really shows, again, who really wants it, who really wants the opportunity, who's willing to go that extra mile just to really make it.
Tell them what you're doing now.
So now I operate Happy Vida, which is Happy Life, and it's a personal concierge service. And what we do, we work with busy professionals and executives, and we also have corporate accounts, and you know.
And in about 2.5 months, you have?
I've served 14 clients.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And briefly, what has been the impact of Defy on your life and on your family?
A tremendous impact. I remember just going the night before Defy's first class, I spent about 3 hours on YouTube trying to learn how to knot a tie. So I remember taking off the tie and throwing it and putting it back on. But it's amazing when my mother or my grandmother see me like in a suit. This is the first time I've ever worn a suit. And they're like, oh, he made it. I'm like, yeah, I made it. But just having, it's really become a platform to make my family and my community and my friends proud of and really show that there is an opportunity if you're willing to work hard at it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can stay up here. You can stay. You can stay. Our students, like Jose, make me so proud, and they keep me doing what I do every day. And I'm going to wrap up because I'm out of time. But what I'd like to do is invite you. We have a workshop today at 4 o'clock called Bouncing Back from Failure, I think. Not my favorite thing in the world to talk about, but I'll talk about how I bounced back from my personal experiences, how we can come alongside others who go through failure, and how to prevent failure in leadership as well, because all of us experience it on some level. The other thing that I'd just like to leave you with is we have a booth outside. We'd love for you to visit it. I need help. I'm building out a national model. This isn't about serving 60 guys in New York City, but this is about creating a model that will really bring these transformational opportunities all over this country. So the different things that you can do is provide scholarships to our students that range from $500 to $2,500 that go in the honor of a certain student. You can come out and be a judge in our competitions. The next one is December 7th and 8th. You can introduce me to all your rich investors who can help me fund our privately funded budget, and we'd be grateful for that. So my hope out of this talk with you today is that you start to think you're all building something financially, and is your plan to die with a big fat pile of money? Or is your plan, to maybe use some of your resources, to actually help to teach a man to fish and to give back of the very thing that you're the best at, which is entrepreneurship, to equip others who are the biggest underdogs in America, to take someone who was once known as a prison number, who was in the hole in prison just a year ago, in fact, and to help dust him off, give him the tools, and open up so that he's now known as the founder and CEO of Happy Vida, and these men become incredible fathers, and they were once destroyers of communities, and now they're giving back to communities. So that's why I'd like to invite you to. We'd be happy to talk about it in the workshop or at our booth outside. Thank you so much for your time today.